And I think that's a great attitude to apply to the second question that was given, and the intersection of mental and physical health, because our physical health is one of the largest stressors that any of us.
This is a very
Struggle.
interesting question. Yeah, and because again, I dig in this direction, not just like in preparation for this podcast, but many years ago. And I will tell you how it started. It started probably 10 years ago, maybe more, when one of my colleagues, we were joking about some types, like, they have this kind of funny publication, some like they had before in some popular magazines, that there are different types of people related to sexual life, related to this, related like, and sometimes they compare with some kind of like funny items, so things like fruits, for example, fruity tutti, with so we were discussing, and he is a doctor. He asked me, can you describe, like, from your point of view, having such experience and dealing with women, and also at that time I was getting a lot of letters and messages from women, because I already was known. And can you describe what kind of women, like they're like related to their problems? Maybe you should write some kind of articles like women's problems. I said, actually I can describe. So I write it down on a piece of paper. This woman has this type, like it. So I created sometimes, but I don't know where I put it, this piece of paper, whatever, I forgot. But what was interesting, I was reading actually got some textbook of gynecology.
Little light reading.
Yeah, so this is like Principles of Gynecology, Dr. Jeffcoat, second edition, and published. I try to kind of show, very kind of like Bible, right? Nothing here, nothing there, but it's like Bible. And it published in second edition 62 in England, and then was published in Africa, Australia, Canada, New Zealand, and USA.
Okay.
But somebody from colleagues gave me. But what actually was surprised when the first chapter, I try to kind of.
It's not coming. Yeah, we won't be able to read it.
No, but I'm just
see the text.
No, what I'm trying to say, first chapter, first pages, what we have, I'm going to read it for you, so don't worry. Okay. It says psychosomatic and sociological aspects of gynecology, psychosomatics. And then this doctor describes very short, actually, that women, a lot of women, he says, environment can cause or encourage physical and mental ill health. Okay, the psych influence the development of organic disease is remote parts of the body. Illness begets anxiety, and this is in turn begets illness, etc. So he is writing very shortly that women really divided. That he can divide some women by types, by psychosomatic reaction. And he actually mentioned, at that time I was surprised, he mentioned psychosomatic medicine. We never had any psychosomatic medicine, and social medicine, and we never had social medicine. But it probably is the first doctors that try to say that we have some kind of like connection with women. Because he was looking, he brings some samples, for example, housewives have different complex of problems comparing to other women who's working, let's say. We know it for sure, even about mental problems, right? And then young generation, young women who wants to conceive a child, they have different mental condition, or women who struggles of infertility, right? So we have different condition. So mental health actually has influence. But again, it was only like 2 pages. And why I brought this, because believe me,
huge book in 2 pages.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, 2 pages. But I would say he was a pioneer in bringing question about mental health, because
we do have to start somewhere.
Before I dig deeper, so I was actually reading this Marilyn French book about history of women in the world. Very interesting, and it's actually based on a lot of documents and archives. So you can read here is a lot of like, in the back of each book. So I knew how women were treated and actually how they got pregnant, delivered, and what was the relationship in society, and not just in society towards women, but I mean, in a family. And then another one interesting book was fascinating, written by Angus MacLaurin from Canada. He's a sociologist, I guess. He lives in British Columbia. Very old guy, The History of Contraception. And
Okay.
he brings so many interesting historic data, how actually women were treated, and how actually like there was no gynecology until probably like true gynecology dealing with women's problem until the Second World War. So it means till middle of 20th century. Before that, the doctors were obstetricians. They were dealing mostly with pregnancies and mostly in elite group of population. Otherwise, we had midwives, right? So nobody cares about gynecological problems. And all women who were complaining about something, they were called hysterical women. That's coming right. From ancient Greece and ancient Rome. And hysteria, which is like was called. So whatever you have any pain, whatever irregularities, even endometriosis, like they were called hysteria, right? So hysteria actually was treated by psychiatrists. So if you have this problem, but also psychiatrists were expensive by nature, especially in Europe, right? Even at that time when psychiatry was developing. So only like rich women could go to psychiatrists and treat all this. So they call them hysterical women, and that's it, the hysteria. But actually it leads to creation of vibrator. So, and if you watch the funny movie Hysteria, it's actually a true movie about like made on the true story, and very funny movie about this, how women were treated whenever they had any problem. There was no gynecologist. That's why nobody cared about mental status. And if they say mental status, oh, it's hysteria, hysteric woman, what do you want? So everything was covered by hysteria. Wow. And when the Freud actually was
so one wasn't hysterical before.
No, it wasn't like it has nothing to do with hysterical condition, like right. History, right? But they were called hysterical women, hysteria. That's it. And he said whenever they complained, they had no chance to be sick, to have women disease. That's why we hardly find any publication about women disease. And when I saw this one second edition, at least the guy showed that no, it's not just like, there's some mentals. This is very popular textbooks actually in gynecology. And the majority of textbooks were in obstetrics, which I understand because women are getting married and having babies. And so you see, I was digging like this, and then I realized that has nothing to do with studying mental condition of women and comparing them, like that was the biggest problem. And what then I did, I have to kind of skip. I would like to talk a lot, but because of time. So when I was writing my book, From Mothers to Daughters, like the book, I start digging deeper, and I start digging in science. What's the difference between women and men? Why even in Bible it says that women is created from the rib of Adam, etc. And when I was learning, like even through theological point of view, then I found from scientific point of view that we talk about it when we have not a baby, but let's say the conception happened. And actually all these embryos, which we don't call it embryos at that stage, but I call embryo for better understanding. These embryos could be man and woman. It doesn't depend on your genetic like karyotype, right? That's it. Because they were like equal biological. But again, how we become women then, because we don't have the genes that control development of male organism. So then a male organism start developing faster, and then we kind of waiting for signals from the genes, and we don't have genes, so we didn't get signals, and we start development. So we come a little bit late in development, just a few days, 1 or 2 days. But it's okay. then actually, if you look through evolution of hormones, and I dig here also very deeply, our estrogens, our women's hormones are created from testosterone.
Interesting.
And from testosterone through process we call aromatization in our follicles in our eggs. And also if you look at the quantity of men's hormone, male hormones and female hormones. So there are 5 types of male hormones, and just testosterone is probably the most important. But again, if you look, so by quantity, that male hormones dominates in our body, but the proportion between testosterone and estrogen, like between male and female hormones, different comparing to men. That's why this makes this little difference, actually very little difference, because the men also, they have female hormones, they have both. But this little difference, again, helps us to develop in different way, in women's way, right? So female way. So what was also was interesting. So, and this was used, to say, you see, the male are dominating everything. That's why probably I don't know. I said, in Greeks, in the ancient Greeks, the Greece, they didn't know about this hormonal dominance. Kind of manipulate with the data, but it was interesting. But again, then I started to, as I said, why I was to write this book, mostly to give information about women, like how we developed, how we function, and the mother should bring this information and actually calm down, especially teenage daughters, that nothing like that. Also, the mothers sometimes very kind of controlling people, and then try to compare everything with going in a young daughter to their body, and and they kind of we completely different by age. But I was try to explain how we differ from men, and I found a lot of data. First of all, I went through pediatrics publication of doctors and how. Then I dig to cognitive development and etc. And it's interesting, the cognitive development mostly written by teachers school teachers or university teachers, and very little of psychiatrists or psychologists. Child psychology still probably developing. And by the way, the pioneer in child psychology was the daughter of Freud. She was amazing. Was started the child psychology, and she was really good in that. But anyway, so I started digging, and then I made a table. So I'm going to show. Of course, it's not in English. That's why I probably need to translate. So I made a table. I don't know, probably like this, and it's a big table. When I compared girls and boys, and what I found, that development of our brain is different, a little bit different. There's differences.
Interesting.
Which actually, for example, our left part of the brain, which actually related to our verbal, not habits, how to say, verbal skills, the verbal skills. So actually develop in girls faster than in boys. That's why we talk, but the right part of the brain, it's actually environmental skills, about this environment. It's actually developed slower. That's why many women can be lost amongst 3 trees, and my mother was an exception. My mother could be lost just right, in the area she knew, but it was interesting. Men actually more developed to analyze the location. And if some women even cannot use GPS properly because they still are lost, right? Because that's come from our brain. I'm not talking about 100%, because with years, with life, with getting experience, of course, we somebody knows better, somebody knows less. But I mean, this was predisposed, and here and there about emotion, whatever, about friendship, this is all. Then I said about cognitive process and whatever. So motor skills, usually very good develop in boys by 4 years old, in girls by 6 years old. And it
Okay.
comes actually to focusing the attention, to accepting information. It's a very big table, comparing a lot. So I took probably hundreds of different publication, whatever I could find, and then I put here and there. So it's scientific approved, not that just like created my own ideas. But it also creates like why we, for example, prefer these pink colors, warm colors. We prefer pink, girls prefer warm colors, when boys prefer cold colors. That's why blue color is not from some kind of like there's so many series, but actually it's not series, it's just like how it is, right? So and then even the playing with dolls and the cars. Why men prefer cars? Because they like more their brain is like created in ways that they prefer more activity, more kind of like in movement toys, and we prefer more stable, like static toys. That's why I prefer dolls that not moving like crazy, right? So, and if you compare all this kind of like little things that makes us women and men, there is different right from the beginning, from embryonic period. Even if you talk about, I also went through pregnancies, any changes in carrying a baby boy and baby girls, there are changes that confirmed. So you see, we are changed, and it means when we compare psychological condition, our mental condition, of course, we have changes how we react on everything. And that's why our health will depend on our hormones, on our structural brain, and this association that were made not like in men, okay? And now I'm bringing to the point that, yes, this is like a new era, and nobody did too much. But again, we have from statistic, women have more depression like condition, right? Like they have level of depression much higher in women. We know that, right? And then we're talking about even women's health. Let's say we put aside mental health, but women's health. Remember, I told you like it depends on the age. And the young generation, they have irregular periods because in most cases it's related to stress factor. We in love, we worry about study, exams, etc.
Okay.
That's why, and plus we grow. And change in hormonal changes plus stress factor, it's actually affects. We also know the stress factor, and stress factor I divide by 3 categories. I divide like a physical, when we do intensive physical work, like we work physically a lot or we go to the gym. It's actually can bring the changes on metabolic level and change in hormones and everything, and we can have problems with our periods, suppress ovulation. Another type of stress, it's nutrition. I call it energetic. So when we don't eat, we dieting, what we have loss of periods because we're losing energy, and it's another stress for the body. And then psycho-emotional stress, that's like psychological stress, because our brain cannot read signals properly. But when we in love and like falling apart, we stop eating, like we worry about some sort of fear, right? So our brain is reading the changes in the hormonal level. We have more cortisol in the blood, and we have kind of different, like we have problems with our body too. And reproductive system, it's very related and very associated with program of self how to say security, self survival. It's like our body wants to survive, right? So that's why reproductive system, it's a reproductive program. It's the main program. That's why we go through development, but it depends on survival. So if the survival level gives a signal that the danger for your body, something coming, right? It suppresses reproductive system because, like the nature doesn't want to carry a new offspring in a stressful situation, because the body has to survive. The body doesn't care you want a child or you don't want a child. The body wants to survive because we're going through the programs, and that's the point. So nobody actually look at this in this way. Because men, they also have a reproductive system, but men, they do not carry babies. So our reproductive system very depends on the survival systems. you know, and the self-preservation, self-survival. That's why it's very kind of related. That's why when we go into the stress of any region, we can have any problem from reproductive system. And that's the risk dependence. Yes, and we dig in this, but because many doctors never look at this, and they don't want to look at this because the patient is patient. The patient has no nationality, no, I mean, that's it. I mean, it's just a patient, a body who came into the office, right? And how can I help you? What is your complaint? Whatever. I mean, that's a problem. And medicine
I would
usually
say so, yes, because the patient is also a human.
in general. So what we have now, first of all, we have the growth of psychosomatic reaction, also studies in psychosomatic way, but psychosomatic means like, what it means psychosomatic, like your psychology, your thinking, your attitude, your mental condition can create some symptoms looking like a disease, which is true. And in a woman, it's most often, it's number one, it's irregular periods, especially young women. Two, it's pain in the abdomen, like, pelvic pain, we call it, could be chronic pelvic pain, and it's only related to mental condition, has nothing to do with any diseases there. And
interesting.
Yeah, and another, the most popular, let's say, psychosomatic reaction is itching of genital area, itching, especially at night. And usually when women have this problem, when they go to gynecologist, and the gynecologist doesn't ask, did you have any serious like stress in your life? No.
Right.
So usually said, okay, looking for infection. Of course, they have to exclude a lot. And then sometimes it's like vicious circle. The woman go like, through this circle, and we don't know what's going on, and more stress because I tried this, that doesn't help, I tried this,
right,
I tried that.
Right.
And then,
it just escalates.
And also when another problem that a lot of people that any education, like medical or psychological education, now call themselves like expert in psychosomatic reaction. And sometimes they use this Freud theory that it's probably your grandma or your father or your mother.
That's right.
They've seen, and now it's reacting. And some women believe in that. So it's another problem that sometimes they are in this vicious cycle even more deeper, because they have another psychosomatic reaction, right? And that's why, and why it's happening, because doctors, as I said, never look at women, not even like women, but men, but more like when we talk about gynecology, as the woman who has another like psychological part, like psycho-emotional. It's like mental health, like, we never look at this. We, even in reproductive medicine, when we're dealing with infertility, only recently we had a publication, 2 or 3 publications. They tried to figure out how we react on the fact that we cannot conceive a baby, right? So they found that the level of psychological stress is equal to psychological stress when you have cancer.
Oh my goodness.
So you can imagine, and here we have a couple, but usually women react more deeply. Right. So but you can imagine
life and one
you can imagine if you say somebody, you have, unfortunately you have a cancer, we have to treat, but then it's the same reaction when they hear that they have like problem to conceive a baby and we don't know how to help. So they finally started, and in some clinics they finally start inviting psychologists to deal with negative stress. It's something new in reproductive medicine. But other part of medicine, I mean women's medicine, like gynecology, is still without any psychology. And it's another problem. And doctors said, don't tell me about the psychosomatic reaction. It's BS. I don't believe in that. But you have a specialist, a very famous doctor, who on the first page writing about psychosomatic reaction. He calls it psychosomatic medicine. He's a number one. Actually, his textbook is was number one for generations. But the problem is, no, we deny psychology. It's like from, I don't know, it's like Freud. It's like always like thinking about Freud, or rarely they think about Jung. Freud Jung, yeah, but if you ask a doctor name, other psychologists, that's okay.
Right.
you know,
And
very
even there, we've come so far. I mean, those were very important figures, but it's been a long time and a lot of
yes.
science
So
in
yeah, so
between.
you see,
We know a great deal. It's very
we are
helpful,
now in a process of learning more about
which is
mental health.
exciting.
But what we need to do, we need to become friends in different specialties, right?
Yes,
We need to kind of be united and not just like see reproductive organs, but see a human being, see a woman, and see
yes,
if she's
yes.
married or not. So we have to combine psychology, psychiatry, urology, actually, you know, in gynecology, obstetrics, all together, and pediatrics probably too, because by 20, usually pediatrician or family physician dealing with this young growing girl, right? Future mother. And when we combine this and start looking through, it's the same like I usually say when we studied this these subjects like anatomy, pathology, and then physiology, histology. For many doctors, it's so boring. It's about cells, about like, you know,
Right.
it has nothing to do with practical
Very
medicine.
dry.
Very dry. But this is the base of medicine.
That's right.
You know what changes that bones, like,
We're
you know,
studying human beings,
what should
actually.
be in normal condition and what is like should be in abnormal condition. That it's much easier to combine in your brain, whatever you learn, and then see a body with cells, with tissue, with systems, with organs, not just one hole between legs.
Right.
Sorry for, but this is the truth. You have to see your entire
Yes,
body.
that's
And
right.
that you brought this question about mental health, or and sorry, not you, but one of your girls. And that's an important question. But again,
Yes.
we at the beginning, and there's not too many doctors who thinking like me or looking at the woman like me. I hope with time we're gonna change that. So we have to continue to work in this direction.
Well, it's an exciting era. I mean, there's frustrations, and this is in any age, I would imagine, where there are things that do not work anymore about the systems that are in place. But the system is always changing. And in this era, with the age of information, and we've spoken in an earlier session with Gen Z, this generation is the best educated generation.
Yes, they're
we've
lucky
ever
because
seen.
because they can see that there's not black hole, let's say, but let's say I would say the white spot on a map.
Yes,
Where we need to feel and then put together and see
that's right.
entire map, not just like, you know, specific city. And this is and having this new technology, even combining information, analyzing information.
That's
before
right.
we analyzing, like, you know, we're calculating all this validity and etc. Like, you know, ourselves manually. Now we can do it through very good computer systems, and
That's
there are
right.
many systems, and they still bring in that new system to validate information and say if it's true or not, is it correlated or not. And you know, I'm not going to talk about research, but you know how it's changing even.
But they are better prepared to process the research. And for those of them who do not have that level of education, because the planet is very diverse, there are nevertheless more leaders on the planet who are of that generation who can explain it to their friends, to their family members, and they can continue to create a better system that's stronger.
That's I really would like to see these changes, and even if I don't see them in the future, because it would be in 50 years, so I don't know in how many years, but still, this is how it's going on. So
that's right.
Somebody creates the idea, somebody says this shouldn't be, so we stop using the dogmas we used before.
Exactly.
It takes time, but at the same time, there are people who push in this progress ahead to the future generation. That's why we're discussing this. That's a very interesting question, but it's for future generation to put everything together and improve medicine, improve psychology, improve everything. You know,
so that their children have an easier.
Yeah, it's true.
Thank you so much. I'm going to stop recording now. I really appreciate your time on behalf of our young women as well. And thank you again, Dr. O.